Hello everyone and welcome back to Top 10 Gaming. I'm your host Connor Monroe, and today the fog machine is on, the batteries are low, and it's time to get freaky. If you've been here before and you haven't already, be sure you hit like and subscribe because we make daily gamer content, baby! While you do that, I'll get started with our list of the top 10 scary games that nobody has time for. Well, after the intro. Number 10, the Five Nights at Freddy's series. Five Nights at Freddy's was an epidemic, released on August 8, 2014, and has had 9 games over the past 5 years. When this game came out, it was all anyone could talk about, but now the hype has died down for the most part. Even with the release of Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted, the series' first VR game, that was released May of this year. The reason nobody has time for this game is because it has had 9 games over the past 5 years. 8 if you exclude FNAF World since it was pulled from Steam, due to the creator claiming he was not proud of his incomplete mess. On average, the games take 3 or 4 hours to complete, meaning that to play all 8 games, it would take a full day at best, or at worst, a whole half stack of hours at 32. Most people I feel play the games just to keep up with the game theories, but maybe there is something with that VR title, maybe I should check it out. These games are too long for what you get out of them. Jump scares galore and confusing lore. Number 9, Dead Space. Dead Space is a survival horror game released in October of 2008, developed by Visceral Games, with a mobile game that followed in 2011. Dead Space was critically acclaimed, being cited as one of the greatest video games of all time. But why does nobody have time for it? Well, because while critics believed it to be an amazing game, not all fans agreed. Users have said that while the atmosphere is creepy in the game, you get used to it after only a few levels and it won't affect you anymore. And that once you learn that every non-human corpse is gonna leap out at you, the tension fades. Enemies just run at you rather than stalking and going for the kill, and honestly, that's what you need in a horror game that's supposed to be one of the best of all time. It may be a good game, but not a good survival horror. Once you get used to the jump scares, you can predict where the next spook will come from, and then the game just gets boring. Number 8, The Evil Within. The Evil Within is another third-person perspective survival horror game, this game being developed by Tango Gameworks and published by Bethesda. The game was released in October of 2014 for consoles and PC. The game is typically appreciated by users, while some do have their quarrels, and it's Bethesda, there are bound to be a few bugs. But that's the appeal, right? Well, that may be the case at the beginning, but when this game can take up to 36.5 hours to complete, that's not gonna be the case. I was up till 1 AM last night playing games, and I don't regret it. Okay, maybe I do, I'm kinda tired. But if I saw a horror game that took 36 hours to complete, I don't think I'd be picking it up. Okay, yes, if the story is good then it's worth it, but if I'm going to have 36 hours of a game where the horror is going to eventually end up being stale, I'm not really gonna enjoy it for that long. And if I take a break from it, I won't go back to it. I'll get lost in another game that has more to do and get obsessed with that for a month. Right now my obsession is The Forest, which is kind of like a survival horror sandbox game, but there's the key word, sandbox. Plenty of things to do in my 100+ hours played, and I don't regret them. However, if I'm sneaking around all day, then I'm just gonna get bored pretty quickly. Number 7, Siren. Siren is a game that was released in 2003 for the PlayStation 2. It was developed by SCE Japan Studio and Project Siren, and was published by Sony Computer Entertainment. While the story, graphics, and sound were doing fairly well in reviews, the gameplay was getting more of an average score. Some users claim that while the missions in the game are short, you oftentimes spend a lot more time trying to find the correct way through the mission. You don't have a speed advantage over enemies, your foes are essentially as fast as you, and if you run too long, the only way to recover is by standing up straight, motionless. If you don't, you become very slow. You also don't have any visible indication of your health, even in the pause menu. You regenerate over time, but you still don't know where you're at. You can only save at the end of missions, and other missions aren't unlocked until after you've completed the first ones. Even if you collect important story items, if you die, you have to do the whole mission over again. That would be frustrating enough. I don't have time to keep repeating the same level over and over again like I did grade 11 math. Number 6, Cry of Fear. Cry of Fear is yet another survival horror game. Developed by Psych Scholar, this was originally a mod for Half-Life back in 2012. It was released as its own game in 2013. Steam user Red John claimed that this was the worst game he has ever played. He claims it's a waste of gigabytes and you should not install/buy/play this game ever. Why? Because this game was priding itself on being multiplayer co-op mode. Because it ain't fun unless your homies can join, right? Well, when John tried hosting a LAN game, he wasn't able to. He found out that he had to host a dedicated server with port forwarding and the whole 9 yards, so he decided to do so. He port forwarded and to no avail. It took a while, but they were finally able to connect using console commands and his IP address. He then goes on about the game engine. His friend was totally unable to play due to the lag that various maps caused in the game. John was running it okay, but could notice the bad optimization. After he goes on for a while, he says that he hopes the game won't damage his hard drive. Holy crap! If you're genuinely worried about your hard drive after playing a game, that game must not be worth your time. After the amount of work he put into getting a server working and then hardly being able to use said server, I can totally understand the frustration. God, just reading his experience makes my blood boil. Number 5. Amnesia, a Machine for Pigs. Amnesia, a Machine for Pigs was developed by the Chinese Room and published by Fictional Games. Originally meant to be a mod by the Chinese Room, the game is an indirect sequel to Amnesia: The Dark Descent. And with a history like that, it sounds like it's gonna be great. However, users on the Bungie forums have other ideas. One user, whose name is just a really long unimpressed face, said that this game sucked. Since there is no inventory, no sanity meter, you can't pick up anywhere near as many objects, and the monsters are pigs, therefore they're not scary, and the writing is terrible, the story is terrible, and the game is too short. Now looking back at the history, the game was supposed to be a mod for Dark Descent. The game is understandably short, and maybe that's what will get you to play it, but it's short because it's a mod. And I don't want to have to deal with a game that just feels unfinished, especially when it's no longer just a mod. Fictional Games published it, and when doing so, they should have looked it over to make sure it was up to par with their other games. I don't want to waste my time playing a game and then have it not even be good. Number 4. Alien Isolation. Alien Isolation was developed by Creative Assembly and based on the Alien sci-fi film series. Published by Sega in 2014, the game is set 15 years after the events of the 1979 Alien film and follows Amanda Ripley, the daughter of the movie's protagonist Ellen Ripley, as she investigates the disappearance of her mother. On the GameSpot forums, one user named Pedro claimed that the game is too long. He says, "We will complain about games being too short, but then you will have games like these when they're just simply too long." He says that the game takes 15 to 20 hours to complete, which isn't bad, but it's what you're doing with these hours that's the problem. And that's the point of some of these other points on the list too. That good playtime means you get your money's worth, but when you're doing something repetitive or annoying or slow for those hours, it becomes a waste of time. He says that the game does a great job at setting up atmosphere, immersion, and an introduction to the world, but then they slowly grind away at their accomplishments by adding a mass amount of filler. He thinks the game is all filler, and that's understandably annoying. Number 3. Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion. Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion was published by Lag Studios in late 2014. The game revolves around going through levels of a mansion that have increasingly scary jump scares, but the thing is that the game doesn't get scary until you reach level 2 or 300. By level 50 I get bored because things aren't scary. So how are you supposed to hold my attention for it to get good? Ain't nobody got time for that, unless you're drunk and waiting for your pizza to arrive, but you gotta be alone too. Make it sad. Number 2. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. VTM Bloodlines was published by Activision and is a game that can take up to 40 hours to complete. This horrifically long game can only be considered to be terrifying because it takes so long to finish. I don't even want to spend 20 hours in the same story, I just need to know. So how am I supposed to spend 40? I can't even spend 40 hours in summer school. How the actual hell could I do this? 40 hours, oh my god, 40 hours. Number 1. Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth. I found it just annoying and boring. Not having any monsters show up in a Lovecraft game for hours upon hours of glitchy, boring gameplay isn't a good way to go. And that's a quote, and that's all you really need to say about this game really. Hours of glitchy gameplay and no monsters appearing in a Lovecraft game? You never know when the game is going to crash, freeze, or when you'll encounter another bug. This game is the definition of jibbing out, and we have a Bethesda game on the list. You think modded Skyrim is bad? Try this. And no monsters for hours in a game about the literal king of horror monsters? What the actual f***? Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. If you enjoyed, be sure you hit that like and subscribe button for more Daily Gamer content. And write us a comment down below about what game you've put the most time into, be it for good or bad. And I'll read out some of my faves in another video. Until then, I have been and shall remain Connor and hella mad, and I'll see you in another video. No monsters, are you kidding me?